Hey guys, today we're talking about solving absolute value inequalities. So we're really putting together what we've learned about inequalities and how we write our inequality answers, and also what we've learned about absolute value. What I really want you to remember about absolute value is how we split it apart into two separate equations, and think about how yesterday, whenever we solved the compound inequalities, we got two answers, and our answers either came together or they went apart. Okay? So what's going to happen here is I know that my graph is going to come together if I have, when I get the absolute value sign, if I have a less than symbol, it's going to come together. If I have a greater than symbol, it's going to go apart. Okay? So let's take a look at this. And I want you to write this out here on the left-hand side. I want you to write this out as a reminder. If you have a less than symbol, where it's facing less than like that, it's less than, meaning it's going to come together. If you have a greater than symbol, or it's going to go apart. And so that's an idea where it helps you. We're just going to split it up. We're going to solve it, and it helps you understand what my graph, what my answer is going to look like. So let's take a look here at number one. First step always with absolute value is to get the absolute value itself, get the absolute value by itself. And here I've done that. And we have this greater than sign. Now that greater than sign means this is going to be an OR problem. Now, I'm going to split this up into two separate equations, just like normal. We have a positive 11 and a negative 11. That's how you split up absolute value. But I want you to notice that I also split it up to where we have the normal greater than, but I also have a less than. So we don't just switch it, we don't just have a positive and negative, we have a greater than a positive and a less than a negative. So we also switch the greater than and the less than symbol, okay? So we switch both of those, and then we just solve it like normal. So I solve this one, we get x is greater than 3. I solve this one, I get x is less than negative 8. And then what I'm going to do here is we're going to put those on here. I'm going to have a point at negative 8. I'm going to have a point at 3. And since this is an OR, I know that my graph is going to go apart, and I'm going to have an open circle because it is not equal to. Okay? And then we can write this as my interval notation and as my inequality. So remember, your inequality is just your answer. We're going to have x is less than negative 8 or x is greater than 3. That's just my answers here. Notice how I wrote the smaller number first, and I put also the smaller number on my graph first. My interval notation, remember I have my two intervals, and my two intervals are going to be connected with a U, a union symbol. So we're going to have negative infinity to negative 8, parentheses, union, 3 to positive infinity. Okay? Just like that. So let's take a look down here at number 2. So on number 2, there's my absolute value. The first step always is to get that absolute value by itself. Okay? So to get that absolute value by itself, I need to add 3 to both sides. So let's do that. Let's add 3 to both sides, and I'm going to get the absolute value of 2x is greater than 18. We don't make a decision on if it's an or an and until the absolute value is by itself. But now that the absolute value is by itself, I can split this up, and I can have 2x is greater than positive 18, or 2x is less than negative 18. Notice how it changed from a positive to a negative, and I also flipped it from a greater than to a less than. Now we're going to solve this. I'm going to divide this side by 2, this side by 2, and we're going to get x is greater than 9. I'm going to divide this side by 2 here, this side by 2, and I'm going to get x is less than negative 9. So there are my two answers. The weird thing about this is usually your negative ends up on the right side. So usually your smaller number ends up on the right side. So you have to pay attention to that whenever you put it on the graph. So now I'm going to put a point at negative 9. I'm going to put a point at positive 9. So make sure your smaller one is over here. I'm going to circle both of these points, and we're going to go out to the left here, out to the right here. My interval notation, we're going to go parentheses, negative infinity to negative 9, union 9 to positive infinity. And my inequality is going to be x is less than negative 9 or x is greater than positive 9. So hopefully this is making sense. Let's turn the page and let's take a look at number 3. So number 3, this one is just kind of thrown in at us, but you notice this one does not have an absolute value. So this one is just a 1 of. So we're just going to minus 3 to both sides. We're going to get negative x is less than negative 1. Then I'm going to divide both sides by negative 1, and I'm going to get x is greater than positive 1. Notice how I flipped the sign whenever I divided both sides by a negative. Okay, so now I can put that point on here. Notice here how I only have one answer because this one is not absolute value. Okay? All right, so I'm going to put that here, have an open circle, and this one's going to go to the right. So it's just going to be parentheses 1 to infinity, or x is greater than 1 as my inequality. All right, number 4. Number 4, remember, first step is to get the absolute value by itself. To get my absolute value by itself here, I need to multiply by the denominator since the whole thing is in the fraction. So that'll cancel out. I'll get the absolute value of 2x minus 5 is less than or equal to 3. Now, notice here, this one I have a less than symbol when I get my absolute value by itself. And so I know this one's going to be a and problem, which means my graph is going to come together. That's important to remember, okay? So I'm going to have here, we're going to go 2x minus 5 is less than or equal to 3, and 2x minus 5 is greater than or equal to negative 3. Okay? And now I can just solve this. I can add 5 to both sides, and we're going to get 2x is less than or equal to 8. And then I can divide both sides by 2, and we're going to get x is less than or equal to 4. Okay? Then over here, I'm going to add 5 to both sides, and we're going to get 2x is greater than or equal to 2. Then I can divide both sides by 2, and we're going to get x is greater than or equal to 1. Now, those are my two answers. Now, remember that this is an and problem, so whenever I go to put these on my graph, we're going to have 1 at 1, 1 at 4. Make sure you do it in the right order. I'm going to fill in this circle and this one because they are equal to. And then I know that my graph is going to come together. That helps me with my interval notation. My interval notation is going to be 1 to 4 with my bracket since it's equal, and then my inequality. Watch what I do here. I'm going to write this together. So I'm going to write it like this. We're going to go x is bigger than or equal to 1 and less than or equal to 4. You could write it like this, or you could write it like this. Just make sure you use an and. But you could write it either way. I prefer to just end up putting it together like that. Let's take a look at number 5. Number 5. I need to get the absolute value by itself first. I can't tell if this is an and or an or yet because I cannot tell until the absolute value is there by itself. So the first thing I'm going to do is minus 5 to both sides. Oops, the board is messing up. Let's try that again. So yeah, first thing I'm going to do is minus 5 to both sides. And I'm going to get negative 3 times the absolute value of 2 minus 4w is less than negative 18. And then I'm going to divide both sides by negative 3. Okay, and I'm going to be left with 2 minus 4w is greater than, oops, I almost messed up there. It's going to be greater than positive 6. And notice how I flipped the sign whenever I divided both sides by a negative. Then we're going to split this into two problems, and now I know this is an or problem, and it's an or because it is greater than right there. Okay, so now I have a 2 minus 4w is greater than 6, or 2 minus 4w is less than negative 6. All right, perfect. Now we're just going to minus 2 to both sides, get negative 4w is greater than 4, divide both sides by negative 4, and we're going to get w is less than negative 1. Once again, since we divided both sides by negative, we're going to end up with w is less than negative 1, or If I minus 2 to both sides here, we're going to get negative 4w is less than negative 8. Divide both sides by negative 4, and we're going to get w is greater than positive 2. So here's my final answers. And yes, my sign flips twice in that problem because I divided by a negative twice. So we're going to have w is less than negative 1. I can put that on here at negative 1. And we're going to have a point at positive 2. We're going to have open circles here on this problem. And if this is an or, so we're going to go to the left and to the right. I can write in my answer here for my inequality. We'll have w is less than negative 1 or w is greater than 2. And my interval notation. Remember, guys, we're going to have two intervals. We're going to connect them with a union symbol. Okay? So we're going to go negative infinity to negative 1, union 2 to positive infinity. Okay? Just like that. All right, here's our last problem here for today, number 6. Number 6, I got to get the absolute value by itself. Okay? I got to get that absolute value by itself. And to get that absolute value by itself, I need to start off by adding 5 to both sides. So we're going to get negative absolute value of w is greater than negative 4. Then I'm going to divide both sides by negative 1 to get rid of that negative. And we're going to get the absolute value of w is less than positive 4. My sign flips. And then all I have to do is, I know absolute value, we have a less than. So this one's going to be an and problem. So we're going to go w is less than 4 and w is greater than negative 4. And then bam, just like that, we have my answer. I'll put a point at negative 4. I'll put a point at positive 4. I'm going to leave both of these as open circles, and I know that this one comes together. So my inequality, I'll write x in the middle. I'll go x is bigger than negative 4 and smaller than positive 4. And for my interval notation, I'm going to write like this, negative 4, comma 4, and parentheses around it. Okay, so at the end here, I want you to think about the steps to solve an absolute value problem. First step, isolate the absolute value. Second, decide if it's a less than or a greater, so you know if it's going apart or coming together. And then just split it up, get your two answers, and put it on the graph. All right? Okay, hopefully this has been some help to you. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks, guys.